Hello and welcome to this video discussing Brutus number 1. Brutus was the pen name of an anti-federalist who opposed ratification of the Constitution of 1787, whereas Madison in Federalist 10 supported the Constitution because he thought a large national republic would protect freedom and be more effective than 13 regional or state republics. Brutus opposes the Constitution because he thinks that a powerful national republic will collapse on itself or become tyrannical in order to survive. Brutus spends a decent amount of time in this essay setting up the problem. The people of the United States have to decide if this Constitution will preserve freedom as it existed at the time or work against it. The stakes are high because if the people give up power to a national republic and that turns out to be a bad decision, it is very unlikely that the ruling powers will give that power back without a fight. So having established the stakes, now Brutus needs to make his case that the Constitution would be exactly this type of hard-to-reverse mistake. He asks the question, is a national federal republic better than a network of confederated but mostly independent states? Before he can answer this question, he diverts into explaining why the Constitution makes the national government so much more powerful than the state governments, pointing to specific parts of the constitutional text to support his claims. He immediately homes in on the elastic clause, which gives Congress the power to pass laws that are necessary and proper to carrying out the Constitution. Brutus knows how flexible and powerful this clause could be, anticipating the sort of stretches that Alexander Hamilton would use to establish his financial plan, and which the federal government has used for over 200 years to expand its jurisdiction. Brutus also highlights the supremacy clause, which makes the Constitution and federal laws superior to anything passed by state governments. Under this clause, whatever flexibility the states might have is curtailed by the need to follow federal laws. He also points to the substantial economic powers of the national government, including control over paper money and the power to tax. Brutus fears that this power will starve state governments of resources. Even though they might also be able to institute taxes, Brutus fears that the national government will tax people so much there won't be anything left for the state governments to collect. Then he looks at Article 3, which establishes a federal court system that will have jurisdiction over the whole country as another limit on state power. State governments will be forced to follow the decisions of the Supreme Court and the lower courts that Congress establishes. Now, with the benefit of 200 years of hindsight, we can see that many of Brutus's predictions came true, but not to the extent that the state governments would be completely annihilated. There are still significant differences in policy and law among the 50 states, but they are nowhere near as independent and sovereign as they imagined themselves to be in the 1770s and early 1780s. The Constitution did truly establish a much stronger national republic and curtail the independence of the state republics. So, having established that the Constitution probably would create a strong national republic, Brutus has not yet answered the question of whether this would be a good thing or a bad thing. And in the rest of the essay, he works to justify his claim that it would be a very bad thing, largely because a national republic would either collapse or, in order to avoid the collapse, it would take so much freedom away from the people that the people would no longer be free. His basic argument boils down to the idea that democracy or republicanism can only function in a small society, where the people are enough alike and connected enough to each other that most people understand they are connected within society and they can see what is in the best interest of the people. In a larger society, people are disconnected, and it is easier for one group or one person to gain some power and then decide to get even more power by limiting the other groups. Now, just like Madison, Brutus does not advocate direct or participatory democracy, where the citizens write or vote on every law. He supports the idea of republican democracy or a democratic republic, where the people choose representatives and then the representatives have the responsibility to do the actual governing. But while Madison thinks that a large republic is better for republican democracy because the people will have a larger pool of candidates, qualified candidates to choose from, Brutus thinks it will be worse because the people will not know the candidates as well, and once they're elected, the representatives will not know their constituents as well. And further, there are substantial differences in the attitudes and needs of the people of each state. A government that has to try and represent all of them will have to make lots of compromises and annoy lots of people. Think about how much easier it is to get 3 of your friends to agree on doing something than it is to get 20 of them to agree on doing something. Brutus says these compromises will lead to more people being unhappy with the federal government, which will require the federal government to use greater force, including possibly a standing army, to make the citizens comply. And this forced compliance would be a violation of liberty. Now, for this reason, he urges the states to reject the proposed constitution. Now, as we know, he failed to convince the states to do so. It's up to us to evaluate how many of his predictions came true and whether or not we're happy with the nation that resulted from that ratification. Until our next discussion, thanks for watching.